Anthony Collins stood silently in front of the towering glass windows of the car dealership that bore his own name, but for the first time in his life. He didn't walk in with the confidence of a CEO. Gone was the tailored suit and polished demeanor. Instead, he wore a faded denim jacket, hid behind a scruffy beard, dark glasses, and a weathered baseball cap. No one here knew who he really was. And the scariest part, no one seemed to care. Have you ever seen your name hanging on a sign, only to step inside and feel like a complete outsider? Anthony had inherited the dealership chain from his father, a man of integrity who spent a lifetime building trust and reputation. But lately, something had shifted. The reports still showed steady sales, yet customer complaints were rising, and feedback from this particular branch felt unusually cold. Something was wrong, and Anthony knew he had to find the answer himself. This branch, located on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, was once considered the company's golden arm, but he hadn't set foot here in over a year. Back then, he believed delegating authority to the branch manager was the right move, until a quiet instinct told him, "You've taken your eyes off what matters most for far too long." As he stepped through the gleaming glass doors, Anthony had no idea that within just a few hours, he wouldn't just uncover a single lie, he'd expose an entire system built on manipulation and deception. One employee would go out of their way to cover up the truth. Another, just a new hire on probation, would have the courage to say, "This isn't right." And Anthony, a man who thought he knew every corner of his own company, would come face to face with a truth he was never prepared to see. The automatic doors slid open. Anthony walked into the dealership looking like any ordinary working-class man, just trying to find a used pickup truck for his family. The scent of new leather mixed with a trace of hot coffee. The showroom glistened, cars freshly waxed, and polite laughter echoed from the far end of the room. Everything looked perfect, almost too perfect. Not even 30 seconds had passed when a tall man with slicked back hair and a tightly fitted dress shirt strode briskly toward him. A shiny name tag gleamed on his chest. Derek. Looking for a new ride, Derek beamed. His smile practiced like he'd rehearsed it in the mirror. "Just browsing," Anthony replied casually, his voice roughened just enough to match the persona, an average middle-aged man with no clue about specs or engines. "I'm looking for a pickup. Something solid, reliable." Derek instantly switched into target lock mode. "Well, you've come to the right place," he said, patting the hood of a nearby black truck. "This baby just had a brand new engine installed last week. Purrs like a kitten. Comes with full warranty coverage. Price is just a little higher than the standard model, but trust me, it's worth every penny." Anthony's brow twitched. That truck, he knew it. He remembered it like the back of his hand. Same lot number, same minor dents under the handle. It was a carryover unit, recently given a quick oil change and an exterior shine. There was no record of any engine replacement, and absolutely no way it was just installed last week. A cold shiver crept down Anthony's spine. Still, he kept his expression neutral. "New engine? Huh, that's a big deal. Why'd it need replacing?" Derek didn't even blink. "Previous owner blew the engine, cracked pistons and all. We replaced everything, brand new from the manufacturer. That's why it drives like a dream. Nothing to worry about. No hesitation, No uncertainty, just lying, like reading from a script. Anthony swallowed his anger. If this was the kind of sales pitch being encouraged within his team, then this wasn't just a casual check-in. This was going to be open heart surgery. Before he could press further, a voice called out from behind Derek. "That's not true." They both turned. A young woman in a company uniform was walking toward them. Her face was firm, her eyes sharp with tension. Her name tag read Lisa. Derek narrowed his eyes and let out a dry chuckle. "Why don't you focus on your paperwork?" Lisa. She didn't budge. That truck only had a basic service. No one replaced the engine. The air thickened. The fake charm in Derek's grin faded just a little. Anthony glanced from Lisa to Derek. One had the courage to speak up despite being new. The other was scrambling to cover his tracks without a hint of remorse. Derek's voice dropped into a warning tone. "I've got this. Stay out of it." Lisa clenched her fists, then turned and walked away, clearly not wanting to escalate the situation. But the disappointment in her eyes lingered like a bruise on the air. Anthony knew in that moment he hadn't just witnessed a lie. He'd witnessed silence being forced, and that's when a real boss starts questioning himself. Derek tried to smooth things over with a half-hearted smile. "Sorry about that," he said, voice lower now. "She's new. Doesn't quite get how we do things around here. Little too by the book sometimes." Anthony offered a faint smile. And being by the book, that's a problem." Derek shrugged. "In this business, if you don't tweak the story a bit, the customer walks. We've got quotas. No signed deal. We're out the door by the end of the month." Anthony didn't respond. He just nodded slowly, like a gullible customer starting to be convinced. But inside, a storm was rising. Derek hadn't lied by accident. He lied because it was second nature, because he never imagined anyone would call him out. And Lisa was the only crack in a machine that otherwise ran far too smoothly. From the front desk, Anthony saw her hunched over a computer, fingers tapping rapidly. But unlike the typical busy work facade, her tension was real. Her lips were pressed tightly together. Her eyes kept darting toward the sales floor where Derek was already sweet-talking another customer with his signature charm. She knew something was wrong. She tried to fix it, but no one stood beside her. Derek led Anthony to a desk tucked in the corner of the showroom. A glossy poster of a fiery red sports car hung on the wall, bold and flashy, in stark contrast to the heavy air settling between them. "I can knock a few hundred off if you sign today," Derek said, leaning in with a grin. "But it's a limited-time deal. A few folks already have their eye on this beauty." Anthony nodded slowly. "What about the warranty?" Derek didn't miss a beat. 1 year, bumper to bumper. Parts, labor, the whole thing. No extra fees. Another blatant lie. Anthony knew the dealership's actual policy, a 30-day limited warranty, only on select models, and this truck wasn't one of them. Anthony nodded thoughtfully, as if he were just moments away from sealing the deal. But then he tilted his head slightly, his gaze drifting back toward the front desk. Lisa was on her feet now, a folder of documents clutched tightly in her hand. her eyes locked on the manager's office, its door still shut. The person inside either unaware or unwilling to acknowledge what was unfolding just outside. In this place, truth wasn't welcome, and honesty, it had become a nuisance, something to be silenced. Anthony turned back to Derek, studying him more closely. He couldn't blow his cover now. Not yet. You don't cure an illness by treating the symptoms you have to understand how deeply it spread. And to do that, he needed to see more. More lies, more damage, more heartbreak. Lisa was just one piece of the puzzle, but she might be the key to seeing the whole picture. Derek pulled out a chair across the desk, sliding into it with practiced ease. In one swift motion, he placed a thick folder and a sleek silver pen in front of Anthony. I just need a few signatures here, and here, he said, tapping on lines of fine print, the kind printed so small it might as well have been invisible without reading glasses. I'll handle the rest for you. Anthony didn't rush. He picked up the contract slowly, squinting as if struggling to make sense of it. His voice was calm, deliberate. Should I read it over carefully? Derek burst into laughter, like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all day. Trust me, you don't need to worry about that. This is the standard company form. Everyone signs the same thing. If you try reading every line, you'll be here till tomorrow. Exactly the answer Anthony was expecting, and the very one that made his blood boil beneath the surface. Spread across the table, the contract listed a sale price nearly 15% above market value, not to mention a stack of hidden fees: processing fee, inspection fee, priority service charge, all buried in fine, blurry print designed to disappear between the lines. Anthony knew this tactic far too well. Win the trust. Trap them with a signature. A carefully laid snare one customers wouldn't notice until it was too late. He leaned back in his chair, feigning contemplation. What if I need more time to think it over? Derek's smile thinned noticeably. Well, the thing is, a few other folks are eyeing this truck. If you don't lock it in today, it might not be here tomorrow. Then, can I leave a deposit to hold the truck? Anthony asked calmly. Derek shrugged. A deposit doesn't guarantee anything. If someone else comes in and pays full price first, we have to prioritize them. Then he leaned in, voice dropping to a low, calculated whisper. I just don't want you to miss this opportunity. Trust me, that price won't be around tomorrow. And this truck, it's beautiful, powerful, rare. There's no second one like it. No second one. The words sliced through what little moral pretense remained. This wasn't just salesmanship, it was manipulation. Anthony said nothing. Silence stretched between them like a test of wills. Then, slowly, he stood up. Derek's brow furrowed. Wait, where are you going? We're not done here. Anthony met his eyes. I think I've seen enough. Derek's expression darkened. He rushed to follow, like a predator afraid his prey was slipping out of the trap. Hold on. If the price is still too high, I can talk to my manager, maybe get you a better deal, but only if you sign right now. Anthony didn't break stride. He walked straight into the open showroom, where customers were chatting with other staff, including Lisa, who stood just a few feet away. She was watching him, her gaze wary, as if she too knew something was coming. Derek was still trailing close behind. "Hey, I'm trying to get you the best deal possible. You really don't want to miss this." Anthony stopped, then slowly turned around. His eyes no longer held the confused curiosity of an average customer. Now, they carried authority and just enough fury to silence an entire room. He reached up and removed the worn baseball cap, took off the glasses, and with one smooth motion, peeled off the fake beard from his jaw. Derek froze. The color drained from his face. The entire showroom went still. You're... Anthony nodded slowly. "Yes, I'm Anthony Collins, owner of this dealership. And you just lied to me 3 times in the span of 10 minutes. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the building. Somewhere to the left, a female staffer dropped a stack of papers. The soft slap of documents hitting the floor sounded louder than a shout. Lisa stood frozen, her eyes wide, then gripped the edge of the front desk with both hands, bracing for what might come next. Derek stammered, I didn't know. I figured you were just Anthony cut him off. You thought I was an easy target. Just like you think every customer who walks in here is clueless and ripe for manipulation." Derek stepped back, his voice faltering. That's how we usually do things. Everyone wants to haggle. I was just staying ahead of the game. Staying ahead." Anthony's voice dropped, low and steady. "No, you just dragged my company 10 years backward." He didn't have to raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words hit like a hammer, and the silence that followed made it even louder. He turned sharply toward the office wing, arm extended, finger pointing with unmistakable authority. "Get the manager, now!" Lisa's eyes followed his gesture, frozen in place. Derek didn't move, paralyzed, caught between shame and fear. "Or," Anthony added, his voice chillingly calm, "I'll speak to the entire corporate board myself, and I promise you, none of you will have a job after today." Within minutes, the manager appeared. His blazer, a different shade than the other staff, gave him a false sense of formality, but it couldn't hide the confusion and dread etched across his face. "You, Mr. Collins, I didn't know you were coming," Richard stammered, his voice brittle. Anthony locked eyes with him. "It's not about you not knowing I was coming. It's about the fact that I came and saw everything you didn't want to see." He stepped into the glass-walled conference room with Richard Torres trailing behind. The manager's face was taut, like he'd just swallowed a chunk of ice. Derek followed last, all swagger gone, shoulders slumped like a reprimanded child. The glass door closed behind them, sealing off the noise of the showroom and trapping them in a silence so tense it felt like a storm waiting to detonate. Richard cleared his throat, trying to reclaim a professional tone. "To be completely honest, sir, I had no idea you were planning a visit today." Anthony folded his arms, gaze unwavering. "I didn't announce it because if I had, this place would have been sanitized before I ever stepped through the door, and I never would have seen the truth." Anthony pointed directly at Derek. "He lied to me about the truck's condition, lied about the warranty. And when a colleague tried to speak up, he tried to silence her. Tell me, Richard, is this your idea of a sales strategy?" Richard swallowed hard. I don't encourage that kind of behavior, but I can't control every word my staff says to a customer. Can't control Anthony's brows furrowed. You're paid to manage this branch, not to scroll your phone while your team scams customers right under your nose. Derek jumped in, desperate to recover. I was just doing my job. Sometimes you've got to massage the truth a bit to make the buyer feel confident. Everyone does it. Customers always haggle. They're never satisfied with the sticker price. Anthony turned to him slowly, locking eyes. His voice dropped steady, cold, undeniable. That's not massaging the truth. That's fraud. And I will not allow that behavior to continue, not under my name. No one spoke. Richard lowered his head. Derek clenched his fists, lips pressed tight, like he wanted to argue but didn't dare. Anthony turned to Richard, eyes sharp. How many times has this happened? Richard hesitated. 1 second, 2, 3. Silence stretched too long. There have been a few situations, he admitted, but I believe my team knows where the line is. No, Anthony cut in, firm. They don't know the line, not if you haven't drawn it. And worse than misconduct is passive complicity from the one in charge. The room felt thick, the air like lead. Richard exhaled, long and slow. I never told them to lie, but I didn't stop them either. The monthly goal is still sales. If we don't hit numbers, we get replaced. Anthony's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists. So you're okay with deception as long as the end-of-month report looks good? Another silence. This one, heavier than the last. At last. Richard spoke quietly, almost like a confession. I think maybe I've let things go too far. Anthony nodded slowly. You have. But today is the day it stops. He turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving both men behind in a heavy, suffocating silence. He made his way straight to the front desk, where Lisa was seated, her fingers still tapping at the keyboard, though it was clear she had been holding her breath, listening for every sound beyond the glass walls. She looked up the moment he approached. Anthony stopped in front of her, his voice calm but resolute. Come with me. Lisa froze. Her eyes flickered with concern. Then she slowly stood and followed him toward a second office, one with frosted glass that concealed everything from the outside. The door closed behind them. The room fell into quiet. Lisa sat down across from him, folding her hands in her lap. She didn't hide her tension. She didn't try to defend herself. She simply waited, uncertain, but composed. What she didn't know was that this moment would change the course of her career forever. Anthony didn't waste time. How long have you worked here? Lisa took a deep breath. Almost a year. In that time, how many cases like what I saw today? She looked up at him. It wasn't a defiant stare, nor was it fearful. It was honest. Too many to count. That answer made Anthony sit a little straighter, and the manager knew. Lisa nodded. He knew. But he never gave direct orders. He just looked the other way. As long as the numbers were there, it didn't matter how they got there. Anthony exhaled slowly. What he had suspected was now undeniable. This wasn't a bad employee problem. It was a rotted culture embedded at the core. He studied her for a long moment. Then, why speak up today? He asked. When everyone else stayed silent, Lisa paused, then quietly said, "Because it was wrong, and I don't want to see this company's name tied to something wrong. No theatrics, no speeches, just truth, plain and clear, plain and it struck Anthony like a bell ringing in a quiet room. Anthony leaned back in his chair, thoughtful for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I'm changing the way this entire place operates, but I can't do it alone. I need people who are willing to speak the truth, people who stand by their principles, and I believe you're one of them." Lisa's eyes widened in surprise. "You mean, I want you to join the team that's going to rebuild this system from the ground up. We're digging into the roots of this company's culture, and if anyone tries to threaten you or tells you to stay quiet and play along, you come directly to me." For the first time since she entered the room, Lisa smiled. Just a small one. But it was genuine. "Thank you," she said. "I'm not sure everyone's going to be ready to change. Some of them have been doing things the old way for far too long." Anthony nodded. "I know. The ones who refuse to change, they'll be gone. But people like you're the reason I still believe this company can be saved." That afternoon, the energy in the showroom was nothing like it had been that morning. Gone was the cheerful chatter. In its place, a heavy, breathless tension that settled over the building like a warning. The news spread like wildfire. The boss came undercover, got lied to, and there's an emergency meeting. Employees gathered in the central area. Some whispered behind hands. Others pretended to be busy, but their eyes kept drifting toward the conference room. Then Anthony stepped out. No cap, no glasses, no disguise. Just the real CEO walking into the center of the room. Eyes sharp, but not angry. He didn't need a microphone, no slideshow, no podium. Just one man, and a truth that had to be spoken. He stood in the heart of the showroom. Overhead lights casting a clear glow across his serious face. The air was so still, you could hear the hum of the AC. "Maybe," Anthony began, his voice steady and deliberate. "You're wondering why I'm here today?" He looked around. Nearly 30 employees watched in silence, barely breathing. And maybe, by now, you figured it out. I didn't come to review spreadsheets. I came because I no longer trust what's coming out of this location. A few heads dropped. Others exchanged nervous glances. "This morning," Anthony continued, "I stood among you as an ordinary customer, and I was met with lies, manipulation, and pressure to sign a fraudulent deal." His voice remained calm, but the weight behind each word felt like a spotlight, exposing every corner of the room. "I didn't come here to point fingers, but I will not leave here without making change." He stepped forward. "Starting today, I'm declaring the following. No more selling based on deception. No more hidden fees designed to bleed our customers dry. No more as long as the numbers look good. Who cares how we get their policies?" A young staffer in the back took a shaky breath, clearly rattled. If a vehicle has issues, we say so. If a warranty is 30 days, we say exactly 30 days. And if a customer needs time to think, we respect that. We don't push them with tricks like someone else is interested. He paused, letting the silence stretch. His eyes swept slowly across the room, locking with one face, then another, making sure no one could walk away later and say they didn't hear it. "And let me make this crystal clear," Anthony said, voice steady and unwavering. "If you cannot sell with integrity, you will not be selling here at all." It hit hard, a direct blow to every bowed head in the room. Some of you might think I'm overreacting. Some of you might be thinking, this is just how the car business works. But let me tell you this, it's because everyone does it that we have to be the ones who don't. Silence blanketed the room. Then, from the back corner, Lisa stepped forward. She didn't look at Anthony. She looked at her colleagues one by one. "I think he's right," she said. All eyes turned to her. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. "We don't have to lie to hit our goals. If we do it right, customers will come back. The truth is, the only story you never have to rehearse." Anthony gave a small nod, quiet, approving. And then, something unexpected happened. From the corner of the showroom, an older employee, Mr. Raymond, who'd been with the company since opening day, nodded slowly. Then another. Then a woman from the admin desk. One by one, hesitant but sincere. Heads began to nod. Not everyone joined in, but enough did enough to ignite what Anthony had come looking for: hope. He turned to Richard, the manager still standing quietly near the wall. "You're responsible for carrying out these changes. If I see any signs of avoidance or backsliding, you will no longer hold that position." Richard nodded. No argument. There was nowhere left to hide. Anthony turned back to the team, drawing a deep breath. "We may lose a few deals in the short term, but if we do this right, we'll rebuild something far greater: trust. And trust, it has no price tag. But it's the one thing that can sustain an entire company." He nodded one final time. "Starting today, we're not just selling cars. We're selling the human values behind every signature. And if anyone doesn't want to be part of that journey, the door is right there." His words landed like a vow, a line drawn in stone. No one clapped. But they didn't have to, because every glance, every lowered head, every quiet nod told Anthony one thing: real change had begun. That afternoon, as the showroom settled under the weight of his firm declaration, Anthony didn't return to corporate headquarters. He stayed, quietly observing, watching how people began to work differently under the new shadow of accountability. And the first thing he did was call Richard, the branch manager, back into the office. The door closed behind them. Richard's face was still tight, not with anger, but with the weight of overdue reckoning. Anthony sat down and opened his notebook. "I want you to start reviewing every deal signed in the last 6 months," he said. Richard blinked. "All of them?" "Yes. Every car, every contract, every promise made, and whether it was kept or broken." He paused just long enough to make the next words undeniable. If there's a deal that was dishonest, if a customer was misled by vague fine print, if someone paid for a warranty that doesn't actually exist, we're going to make it right. Whatever it takes. Richard hesitated. You know that's going to cost money. I know. Anthony nodded. And I also know the cost of doing nothing is far greater. We can't rebuild trust unless we're willing to fix what we've already broken. A few hours later, thick stacks of files covered the desk contracts, warranty slips, handwritten notes, even long-ignored customer complaints. One by one, they were opened, reviewed, cross-checked under the unflinching light of accountability. Richard pointed to one file. This one, the customer was told the car had been fully inspected, but there's no record of any inspection being done before delivery. Anthony clenched his jaw. So they paid extra for something that didn't exist. Richard gave a small, silent nod. They moved to the next file. This deal, it claims a 12-month full warranty, but in reality, it only covered 2 components, and it came with 8 exclusion clauses in fine print. Anthony didn't say a word. He just picked up a red pen and drew a firm, slashing line across the corner of the file. This customer, Anthony said firmly, will receive an official response, a written apology, and a choice, either a refund for the false charge or the warranty coverage they were promised. No fine print, no conditions. Richard hesitated. Are you sure you want to go that far? Some of them might not even know they were misled. Anthony looked up, his eyes unwavering. It doesn't matter whether they know. It matters that we do. And if we know and still stay silent, then we're the frauds. The room tightened. No more excuses. No more but maybe or industry standard. Just the truth and the responsibility that came with it. That evening, Richard drafted his first message to a former customer, someone who'd been hit with a last-minute rate hike on their financing. The subject line contained only 4 words: "We're truly sorry." At the front desk, Lisa began pulling up old complaint emails. Some had never been answered. Others had been marked as resolved, but in reality had been quietly deleted with a single click. Anthony stood at the tall glass window, looking out over the lot rows of pickups, SUVs, sedans, all sitting quietly beneath the last light of day. He let out a long breath, not from exhaustion, but because a piece of the weight had finally lifted. Reform doesn't begin with slogans. It begins with files reopened, customers called back, and every lie replaced with truth. Outside, the sunset draped itself across the windshields and rooftops of idle vehicles, casting a tired, golden hush over the lot. Anthony stepped out of the building, intending to take in a few moments of fresh air, but paused when he saw Derek standing beside a silver sedan, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the ground, like he was having a private conversation with regret. The moment he saw Anthony, Derek looked up and sighed softly. "Let me guess," Derek said, his voice dry, subdued. "You're not out here to wish me good luck, are you?" Anthony didn't answer right away. He simply walked forward, slowly, until he was standing face to face with the man who had once strutted through the showroom with smug certainty. "I want to know," Anthony said evenly. "What you plan to do next?" Derek gave a small shrug, the faint smirk on his lips more reflex than confidence. "I've got some other leads. Places that aren't this complicated. Places where customers come to be sold, to not to get some kind of moral sermon." Anthony didn't flinch. "So, you're planning to take what you did here and just do it all over again somewhere else for the first time?" Derek met his gaze without defiance, just honesty. "I get what you're trying to do, I do, but you're wrong about one thing. People don't want truth. They want to feel like they're winning, like they're special, even if it's just an illusion." Anthony folded his arms, nodding slightly. "And for that, you're willing to be the one who creates the illusion." Derek let out a dry laugh. "That's the car business, Anthony. Reality doesn't sell cars. Emotion does." Anthony stepped in just a little closer. His voice dropped calm, steady, and quiet enough to land like stone. "No, that's not the car business. That's the way you chose to exist in this business." Silence settled over them. Derek looked at the car's window beside him, saw his own reflection staring back. Tired, bitter. Not because he'd been caught, but because deep down, he knew he no longer belonged here. "I could pretend to change," Derek murmured, his voice low and stripped of pretense. "Sit through a few training sessions, nod at the right moments, flash a polite smile. But you'd always be watching, and I'd always be finding ways around it. We both know that." Anthony nodded, not to argue, just to acknowledge the truth of it. Derek opened the car door, pausing before sliding in. "Anyway, thanks for not firing me in front of everyone." Anthony looked at him one last time. "I didn't have to. You removed yourself the moment you chose the wrong side." Derek got into the car. No glance back. No goodbye. The engine started, and the sedan rolled slowly out of the lot like a worn-out shadow being swept away from a place that had finally been cleaned of its stains. Anthony stood still for a moment, watching, not with regret, but with clarity. The cleansing had begun. He turned and walked back inside, and at the front desk, Lisa was already there, waiting, watching. She didn't ask what had happened because she already knew, and with nothing more than a look, she asked the only question that mattered now. "What happens next?" Anthony gave a soft nod. "Now, we begin to rebuild." The next morning, he arrived at the showroom earlier than usual. He stepped into the familiar space, but this time not as a secret observer hiding behind a disguise. This time as someone willing to face the cracks he had once ignored. The lights were already on. The cars still gleamed, lined up in perfect rows. But what caught his attention wasn't what he could see. It was what he could feel. The air, still, measured, honest. Lisa was already there, sitting beside another employee, a young man named Nate, reviewing vehicle records on the computer. There were no forced laughs, no whispered shortcuts, just quiet conversation about car specs, actual warranty coverage, and how to explain things to customers with more clarity and honesty. Anthony didn't step in. He didn't need to. He simply watched from a distance, and then he saw it. Something small, but enough to loosen the weight on his chest. Nate, someone who had once played along with the old ways, looked up and asked Lisa, "Do you think we should explain the interest rate up front, or after they pick a car?" Not a dramatic moment, not a declaration, but the beginning of a different kind of question. The kind that meant change had taken root. Lisa didn't give a lecture. She simply replied, "Up front. Everyone wants to know what they're walking into." A simple answer. But in this place, that kind of answer had never existed before. Anthony turned and walked through the workstations. Other employees were helping customers, but the glossy sales hooks were gone. No more limited time traps. No more hidden maintenance fees folded into the fine print. He stopped beside one desk. A young employee, Melissa, was speaking to a middle-aged couple, and this is the actual 30-day warranty included with the car. We don't require the extended plan, but if you'd like it later, that's always an option. Nothing is hidden here. The couple nodded, smiling softly. No skepticism, no raised brows. For the first time, Anthony witnessed a contract about to be signed without anyone needing to perform. He stepped quietly toward the office. Inside, he found Richard, the branch manager, seated with a full coffee cup resting untouched in his hand. Beside him sat a fresh stack of printed files marked with red ink, some labeled "Resolved," some tagged "Call Back," and some already processed for compensation. Anthony sat down. "How's today going?" he asked. Richard nodded, eyes tired but resolute. Some said they might quit. One already left this morning, but the rest, I think they're trying to see if being honest will still keep a customer, trying to see if telling the truth gets them yelled at, trying to see if you really mean to change things, or if this is just one big performance. Anthony leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting out the glass wall to where Lisa was speaking kindly with a single mother, gently pushing a stroller into the showroom. "And what do you think?" he asked. Richard exhaled. "I think it's worth trying again, but this time trying by doing it right." The door to change had opened. There were no cheers, no ribbon cuttings, no banners declaring a new culture. Just people learning how to be decent again, from the ground up. Because truth isn't always comfortable. It doesn't pat you on the back. It doesn't hand you a reward right away. And it doesn't guarantee a happy ending in under 3 minutes. Sometimes, truth is like sunlight pouring into a room that's been shut tight for far too long, a room where dust has settled into the air itself, and deceit has been mistaken for smart business. And when that light finally breaks in, the first to squint in discomfort is often the one who ignored it the longest. Anthony had been that person. He didn't intend to tolerate wrongdoing, but he had been busy expanding, busy in meetings, busy reading reports. So busy, he forgot. No report ever tells you that your culture is rotting. No spreadsheet reveals who's silently being hurt. It wasn't until he stood in the middle of his own showroom as a regular man and heard his employee lie, saw the one who told the truth be shut down, and watched the person in charge stay silent, that he finally understood the truth never disappears. It just waits for someone brave enough to face it. And the real danger isn't the lie itself. It's when the lie becomes routine and no one sees a reason to change. No one is born perfect. No company is immune to failure, but you always have the power to choose again, to pause, to ask, is this right? To speak up, even if it's just a quiet, I'm not comfortable doing that. Lisa made that choice, not because she wanted attention, but because she didn't want to be part of something broken. Anthony used to think he needed great salespeople. Now, he understands what he really needs are people who are kind, courageous, and honest, even when no one is watching, because in the long run, kindness never needs a cover story. But lies always require another lie to keep them alive. Truth won't make you rich overnight, but it will let you look in the mirror each morning without needing to explain yourself to the person staring back. A company's culture isn't built in PowerPoint slides. It's shaped by how people treat one another, especially when the boss isn't around. Anthony had once filled the conference room walls with polished slogans. Customers come first. We promise transparency. Work with passion and integrity. But then Anthony, the very man who had approved those polished words, hadn't stepped foot in that branch for over a year. And in that year, those slogans became nothing more than decorative decals on the wall. Because culture doesn't live in wall art. It lives in the choices people make every single day. A company's culture doesn't collapse because of one big scandal. It crumbles under the weight of 1,000 small things no one bothered to fix. A harmless lie to close a deal. A good employee ostracized for refusing to play the shortcut game. A customer labeled difficult for asking too many questions. A manager who sees a wrong but lets it slide because we need to hit quota. Piece by piece, those small moments pile up until they become collective numbness. And then, one day, no one remembers where the line was crossed. They just keep moving forward, because everyone else does it. Until one person stands up and says, no. Sometimes, that person is someone like Lisa, someone new, someone not yet bent by old habits, someone who hasn't learned how to stay quiet to survive, someone for whom honesty is still a natural reflex, not an act of rebellion. Anthony had come to understand culture doesn't change because of a speech. It only changes when someone dares to live differently and is protected for doing so. And he realized something even deeper. If you want a team that tells the truth, you, as the leader, have to stop treating truth like a threat. From that day forward, Anthony stopped asking, how do we boost sales? And started asking, how do I make it safe for people to do what's right? It sounds soft, but that single question is what saved his company. If you're working in a place where doing the right thing makes you feel alone, if you've ever sat in a meeting where everyone nodded and you were the only one wondering, is that really true? If you've ever been told, don't speak up, don't rock the boat, don't question what's working, then the story of Lisa and the story of Anthony is part of your story too. You don't need a title to create change. You just need the courage not to nod when your heart is shaking its head. Lisa couldn't fire anyone. She couldn't rewrite the system, but she had a choice. And she chose to speak the truth when everyone else chose silence. The world doesn't change because of the loudest voices. It changes because of those who hold on to integrity, even when no one is cheering them on. Maybe tomorrow, you'll walk back into an office, a store, a meeting room, where what's wrong is still called normal, and you'll be faced with a question. Do I go along, or do I speak up? The answer won't be easy. No one promises you'll be welcomed with applause. But here's what is certain. Just one person doing the right thing can give an entire organization a second chance. Just one employee choosing honesty can give a customer the respect they deserve. Just one leader brave enough to face their own failure can begin to rebuild an entire system. So if you find yourself standing on that thin line between right and wrong, remember, this kindness needs no justification, and truth is the only thing that brings lasting peace.